Hello and welcome to my Wylder class guide in Nightreign. This is going to be the first character you're going to be introduced to in the game when loading up, and it's also going to be probably the best all-rounder and also probably your best bet if you're brave enough to play Nightreign solo, as you are going to have some abilities which are going to be exclusive to the Wylder, which will make playing solo a little bit more tolerable. So without further ado, let's discuss what Wylder is all about and how you can get the most out of it. So starting off, Wylder is going to be a character that's going to scale with HP and strength, so you're going to have a lot of HP, especially when you end up leveling up, making it a very good character for when it comes to tanking, and also going to be a great front runner so that you can pull aggro for your allies and help make sure that they stay alive by taking all the attention for yourself. Now, the great thing about this is thanks to your passive ability, you are going to have Sixth Sense, which means that when you are going to take damage, it's going to be fatal. You will instead kind of like automatically dodge it. You'll see your character will do this unique dodge back animation. When that activates, means you will negate that damage and you will then continue where you left off. You won't get any more HP, so if you're low on HP, you're going to have to heal up quickly. Now, this is only going to be a one-time use, and it will only recharge when you end up either visiting a site of grace or when you end up completely dying out and respawning. You will be able to activate this again. Otherwise, this is going to be a one-time use only, and this will end up saving you in a lot of situations. And that's why this is going to be probably one of your best bets when you're playing single player, since if you do end up going down, there's going to be no one to revive you. So having this is a very nice backup. What Wylder also has going for him is he is going to have the claw shot, which is actually going to be a very nice utility ability, and this is going to have a very fast cooldown of usually about 6 to 7 seconds, and this is going to allow you to grapple enemies and pull them towards you if they are small enough. However, larger enemies, since you can't end up pulling them towards you, you will instead grapple your way towards them instead. This is very good for closing down distance if you're out of stamina potentially, or if enemies are just flying away from you or running away from you and you want to kind of get back into the fight quickly. This is a great way to close the gap, and it also does a little bit of damage, especially against smaller enemies that end up getting pulled towards you as well. Now, another nice thing about claw shot is you can also just use it wherever. You don't have to grapple onto enemies. You can just pull yourself across the map and kind of evade attacks. Potentially, let's say if a dragon is trying to breathe fire on you and you want to get out of the way, or if an enemy is going to do a huge AoE attack, you can kind of use it to just quickly grapple your way out of harm's way. It's a very nice way of getting out of potential damage and also getting right back into the fight if need be. Now, moving on to the ultimate ability of Wylder is going to be Onslaught Stake, which is going to be a kind of like explosive burst, which you can only do if you're close range to enemies, since it has a very limited range. This ability actually has two uses, and it doesn't really tell you the second use. Now, when you end up activating on console by pressing triangle R2, this will initiate a small amount of iframes, giving you invulnerability while you utilize it, and this will also be followed up by a big explosive blast, which is very capable of stunning pretty much most enemies in the game, giving you and your allies time to get a few hits in it before the enemies end up recovering. It does a moderate amount of damage. However, this is not going to be the full use of the Onslaught Stake. Instead, this is going to be a partial use. If you want to get the full use, you have to hold in the buttons, as this will have a longer charge up and will end up doing more explosive damage, actually quite significantly more explosive damage. However, this will end up draining the meter a lot more, which means it will take longer for it to then cool down. You can utilize this in two ways. You can kind of just go for quick bursts and do it more frequently but with less damage, which is great for stunning enemies, and which is also very valuable when it comes to boss fights, since stunning more difficult bosses more often is going to be very valuable, especially when it comes down to defeating those final boss, Night Lord. Now, you can also utilize this for maximum effect by holding it down, which is going to do more damage, and this is going to also stun enemies just the same. However, you will have to wait longer for the cooldown periods. Make sure you kind of use this when applicable. Sometimes using it in a small burst will be better. Sometimes using it for longer charge ups will be better. Now, going back to the scaling for Wylder, it is going to have A rank on the HP. It's also going to have A rank on strength, and it's also going to then have B rank on stamina and dexterity, with all the other stats being at C rank. Now, since weapons don't scale with HP, your next best bet is going to be strength and dexterity, and that is going to typically be greatswords, which are going to end up scaling the best with the Wylder. So typically greatswords and other heavier weapons are going to be your best bet. However, I would recommend, if possible, sticking to greatswords, as that is going to offer you the best scaling. In terms of the stats of Wylder, you're going to be starting off at 240 HP, and if you get all the way to level 15, which is typically not going to happen, but you'll have 1120 HP, which is quite a big amount of HP which is going to make Wylder a great tank class for you and your allies, since you're going to have a lot of HP when it comes down to the final boss phases of the game. You're also going to have a decent amount of stamina, where you're going to have 102 if you get all the way to level 15. However, you'll be starting off at 54 stamina. I did find that stamina was actually quite something that needs to be increased, so if you do have any relics or any ways to increase your stamina throughout your expedition, that would be very much advised, since stamina is something that drains quite quickly when using those heavy attacks from the greatsword, so any more stamina would definitely be appreciated. Your FP is not very important. It starts off at 65 and ends up at 140 all the way at level 15, so not going to have a whole lot of FP, but again, it doesn't really matter since FP isn't going to be that valuable when it comes to Wylder. Now, going back to weapon scaling, some of the better weapons that end up scaling quite nicely with Wylder are going to be obviously the greatswords, as well as some curved greatswords, which is going to scale quite nicely. Monk's Flameblade is going to be one that scales quite nicely. However, it is only going to be a blue rarity weapon, so you might need to get a smithing stone 2 in order to upgrade to purple for the late game. There's also going to be Zamoth's curved sword, which is going to come down immediately at purple color. This one is going to scale quite nicely, another curved greatsword. There's also going to be the Omen Cleaver, which is going to be another curved greatsword. However, this one is going to be of blue rarity, so you're going to have to find a smithing stone 2 to upgrade to at least purple for the final boss. Then moving on to Beastman's Cleaver. This one is also going to scale quite nicely, but again, only blue rank. And then there is going to be the greatswords. Now, pretty much all the greatswords are going to scale quite well with this build, so it doesn't really matter which greatsword you go for, but I'll highlight a few that are going to be ones you want to look out for. Starting off with the Blasphemous Blade, which is going to be a legendary greatsword. This one is going to be quite hard to find, but if you do end up finding it, it will be perfect for this build. There's also going to be the Golden Order greatsword, another legendary greatsword, which will scale quite nicely with the stats. And there's also going to be the Marae's Executioner's Sword, which is also going to be another legendary greatsword, which you can utilize. One of my favorites, though, is going to be the Sword of Milos, and the reason why I like this one so much is it's going to not only scale quite well with the Wylder build, but it's also going to have blood loss element on it, which means that it's going to do exceptionally well in those one-on-one boss fights later on. There's also going to be the Sacred Relic Sword, once again another legendary greatsword, which is going to scale quite nice with your build. And there's also going to be the Ordova's greatsword, which is going to be another purple rank greatsword, which you can utilize. And then last but not least, we're going to be having the Flameburg greatsword, and then the reason why I have this on the list is it is also going to have the blood loss ailment. It's only going to be of blue rarity, so you may need to find a smithing stone 2 in order to upgrade to purple rarity if you want to try take on the end boss, since it is going to obviously need to be upgraded to get the most out of it. Those are going to be the best weapons you can find for the Wylder. However, it is going to be possible to use other weapons. It's not obviously exclusive to this list. However, these are going to be the ones that you want to look out for, since they're going to scale the best with this character. However, some other heavier weapons will also do just fine if you have to use them in a pinch. So now moving on to the relics, there is going to be a number of relics which is going to synergize quite well with Wylder. Some of these are going to be class specific, and some of them are only going to be obtainable by doing the Wylder's Remembrance questline. I will discuss that in a later video, since there's quite a lot of steps involved in doing so. However, I thought I'd just highlight some of the more important ones that you need to be on the lookout for. Some of these are going to be Wylder specific relics, such as one that is going to allow follow-up attacks possible when using character skills. This is going to be great swords only. And then moving on, we're going to create a lingering area of fire damage when using the ultimate, which is obviously going to be quite valuable, especially when it comes to slow moving enemies that are potentially going to be lingering around in that area of effect. We're also going to have one additional claw shot use, and this is also going to be actually quite valuable, as you will be able to move around the battlefield quite quickly and be able to cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time. Then we're also going to have other relics which are going to be very ultimate specific, such as defeating enemies will fill more of your ultimate gauge. Also ultimate gauge plus, which is going to allow your ultimate gauge to get filled up even quicker, and increasing greatsword attack power will be another relic which will be quite valuable, since you are going to be starting with a greatsword and you are going to also be on the lookout for greatswords when you do end up finding them. And anything that is going to be able to increase your HP is going to be quite valuable, since you are going to be looking to be the tank of the group. So any relics that are going to increase your max amount of HP will be quite valuable. And then anything that's going to increase your strength, vigor, or endurance will obviously also be quite valuable, since this will also scale with the weapons that you end up finding. You're also going to want to maybe consider using relics that are going to give you resistances against certain ailments, and this is going to be quite valuable if you end up struggling against some of the Night Lords, which do end up using some particular type of ailments, which could make things a little bit more challenging. And then when it comes to your general expedition and what passive skills you want to look out for, there are going to be a number of them that are going to be quite valuable when using the Wylder class, such as defeating enemies restores HP. Since you have a very high HP pool, you're not going to be able to heal all that HP simply by using flasks, especially if you take a lot of damage. So being able to passively regenerate HP when defeating enemies can be quite nice. Also, increasing maximum stamina is going to be quite valuable. I did find that when using Wylder, stamina actually drained a lot more quicker than I would have liked. So anything that's going to improve your stamina or your stamina regeneration is definitely going to be something that you want to look out for here. Also, finding finding a passive which is going to extend your iframes duration, the one that's going to give you longer dodge windows, will be quite valuable here as well. And then also anything that is going to restore HP, such as successive hits restores HP. That's going to be more valuable when it comes to boss fights. Also, successive attacks increasing attack power will be quite nice, especially if you have this together with the restore HP with successive attacks, since they will end up stacking together. Another one that's going to be quite valuable, if you can find it, is improved attack power when two-handing. Since you are going to be using great swords and heavier weapons, two-handing is going to be something which you will definitely be utilizing quite a bit. And then HP restoration on attacks is also going to be another very valuable one, since you are going to have a very high HP pool when using Wylder. In terms of your starting gear with Wylder, there's nothing going to be too special here. You're going to be starting off with Wylder's great swords as well as Wylder's small shield. The small shield is going to give you the ability to potentially block and parry in the early stage of the game. However, this is going to conflict with some of your special abilities when it comes to finding maybe other great swords. So you may opt to rather go for a two-hand on one of your great swords in order to maximize the efficiency of that. However, in the early games, having a ability to block and parry can be quite nice, but it's not going to be crucial for this build. In terms of how to best maximize your efficiency when playing as the Wylder, I would definitely recommend making use of your ultimate when possible. It is going to have a bit of a kick. Sometimes it will knock you back when utilizing. However, since you do have that claw shot which you can rope your way back into the combat, it's not really a problem for Wylder, since if you do end up getting blasted back, you can just pull yourself back forward into the game and then get straight back to attacking. You're going to want to make sure that enemies are going to keep their aggro on you whenever possible, since your other allies, especially if you do have squishier builds such as an archer or a mage, they are definitely going to want to be sitting behind you while you end up taking most of the hits. Since you are going to have a very high pool of HP, you typically can take quite a bit of a beating, and if you do end up having some relics or some passive skills that are going to help restore HP, this will make you a lot tankier as well. I would also make sure that you use that claw shot to kind of get out of harm's way whenever possible. If enemies are going to be doing a big AoE attack, or if your enemies end up moving away from you, you can very easily either get out of harm's way or pull your way back into combat whenever need be. And since your claw shot is going to have a very short cooldown window, make sure you utilize this as much as possible, since this is going to be a very spammable skill. So just don't forget that you do have access to it. And if you do end up fighting against smaller enemies, you can pull them towards you. Maybe there's an enemy on a cliff, or maybe there's an annoying ranged enemy. You can kind of pull them down to you. This is going to allow you to deal with them at a much easier way, rather than having to climb up and fight them on their higher ground. And of course, one of the best parts about the Wylder, which is going to be one of the reasons why I do recommend it as an all-round character, is the fact that you are going to also be able to, whenever you take a fatal shot, you're going to avoid taking that damage. This is going to be kind of like a way as a self-revive, since you are going to allow yourself time to heal up and avoid going down, which is going to make your survivability a lot higher. And this is also going to restore when you end up visiting sites of grace. For that reason, the Wylder is probably going to be one of the best all-round characters. Does a great amount of damage. It is also going to be a class that's going to be very survivable, which means you don't have to rely so much on your teammates, as you will be able to survive quite easily even on your own. Although I would not recommend being on your own, since this is a team-based game, and if you are with a party, you would, as always, try to stick with your party. But if for whatever reason you are caught by yourself, Wylder is quite capable of surviving by yourself for pretty extended periods of time. I hope you guys enjoyed the guide. If you did, come to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comment section below, what is your favorite class to use currently in Nightreign? And if there are any classes you want me to cover, make sure you mention them in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys, and I'll see you guys again next time. Take care, everyone, and bye-bye.